Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast. I'm your host, and you can call me Mo Lovely. So, for this week, we're going to be talking about feeling our feelings. And so, there's a tendency I feel that is kind of promoted in our society, and sometimes even by our own fear, to only ever feel the good feelings. So, we want to avoid the depth of the terrible feelings, and I feel that by doing so, we are often denying ourselves the totality of the human experience. And I hope to elaborate a bit more on what I mean by that while discussing the art for this week's episode. So, our first work of art is actually a book this week. So, it's the novel The Giver by Lois Lowry that was published in 1993. Now, I won't be talking about every single thing in the book, like chapter by chapter, because honestly, we'd probably be here all day. But it will be a bit impossible for me to not disclose some things that will spoil some parts of that happen in the book. So I can't promise a spoiler-free explanation, but I do promise to not spoil so much that nothing can be gained from the book if you choose to read it after this. So, now with that being said, I'm going to get started. So this book follows Jonas, who's a little boy living in this dystopian future where there are rules and procedures in place so that as much harm is mitigated as possible. So this looks like different age children wearing specific clothing. You can only do certain activities at a specific age, and everyone in the community is expected to contribute in some form or fashion. Which this doesn't sound bad in and of itself until you realize that the way they enforce these things is through corporal punishment, removing the ability for them to make a choice, and even medicating them if they have feelings that they aren't allowed to have. It's even later discovered that they are also denied education that will make them know more than they are allowed, that their entire environment has been cultivated in such a way that even the existence of hills, snow, or even just like feeling the warmth of the sun has been removed, and they are not like granted access to those types of things. Now, later in this book, after Jonas is chosen for his future role as the receiver of memory, he meets up with the existing one and he learns about all of those things. So he learns about hills, he learns about snow, he learns about sunlight, but he's also informed about pain and loss and harm. And it is in learning to become the new receiver of memory that he finds out about all the reasons that the communities in which they live deny them the option of choice so as to avoid those bad things potentially happening ever again. But it's also in these lessons that Jonas learns of all the beauty that they are denied. He learns about colors, he learns about joy, he learns about love, and these things are also forbidden in the community. And there's a part in the book that stuck out to me. When Jonas first learns about what love is, now, because I didn't say it before, Jonas is roughly like 12 or 13 years old. So he goes home to his family unit, and at dinner, he asks his families, so his mother, father, and sister, he asks them, his family, if they love him. And they laugh. Like, they laugh and they kind of chastise him for actually failing to use the proper words to describe what it was he wanted to say. They told him that his use of the word love was inappropriate. So, like, imagine being 12 years old and when you ask your parents if they love you, they laugh in your face. And that part kind of like broke my heart a bit, not gonna lie, because that was so sad. Like, he just learned what love is through a memory at his job, and then he comes home and he wants to know that feeling so bad. He asks his family if they feel that for him, and they laugh. And they're like, that's ridiculous. Why would you even use the word love? And so, yeah, in this society they created, they did their best to ensure nothing bad happens to the people, streamlining everything to such a point that all they know and experience is predictable. To avoid the risks that come with harm, the people are also denied any of the feelings that might be on the other end of the spectrum. And that is quite similar to our next piece of art. Our second piece of art for this week is the movie Equilibrium, which was released in 2002. Now, just like with all other pieces, my spoilerish explanation of the movie is about to happen. If you want to watch it with absolutely zero spoilers, you're going to have to pause this and then come back later. But for those who don't mind a few spoilers, because I promise not to spoil every single thing, I'm going to get started. So this movie is also set in a bit of a dystopian future where we are following John Preston. So John Preston is essentially a cop in this future, and in this future, art and feelings are not allowed, like at all. In fact, everyone in this society has to take this drug in order to suppress their emotions. Any and all art is seen as contraband, and any feeling of any emotion is illegal and it warrants a death sentence. In this society, emotion itself is seen as the root of all conflicts and therefore must be avoided at all costs, even if that means killing those who break the law and destroying any and all art that might exist. So think books, poems, paintings. There's a part in the movie where even like all of their windows and stuff are plastered, so like you're not even supposed to like appreciate the outside because that might induce feeling. It's really uptight, really stressful. And so when Preston, who's our cop, who up until this point had been considered one of the top cops essentially, he forgets one of his doses and he starts to have feelings. And he starts to want to feel even more. He starts collecting art. It's contraband. He protects human and animal lives because that's also seen as something that's like, hey, if you want to do something like that, that means you're having feelings, so you're not supposed to want to do that. So like he's protecting human and animal lives, and he's even seeking out a way to make the world that he's in a way that's more accepting of emotions and feelings and art being an option. So in this society, feelings themselves were outlawed, and they made sure to enforce this cold and lonely world. Something that fascinated me about both of these works of art was how art and knowledge was seen as this terrible boogeyman that influenced people to do bad because it can influence emotion or choice. In the book The Giver, the only person allowed unlimited access to books was the receiver of memory, so no one else in town or in the community got such unfettered access. Everyone else's access to knowledge was heavily doctored to prevent them from ever truly understanding anything, from doctors to teachers. And in the movie Equilibrium, people were literally killed for holding onto art or keeping books. In both of these works, to avoid any potential conflict, feelings were heavily mitigated, and choice was not really an option, which I also found to be fascinating. Because don't get me wrong, it absolutely makes sense to not want the types of conflict that is discussed in both works. So things like war, things like famine, and all these other really terrible things that can happen, like great injury. It is understandable to not want those things to happen. However, to ensure that nothing like that happens, they actually deny everyone even just like the autonomy to be able to feel for themselves or think for themselves. And then like also like in ensuring that nothing of that sort happens, they also deny everyone the chance to feel the types of things on the opposite end of that spectrum. So you're not allowed to feel love, really. You're not allowed desire. You're not allowed joy. And so you sacrifice and deny people the totality of the human experience for a world without violence. And quite frankly, I do not see that as a worthy sacrifice. And that is not to say that I want war or that I want famine or any of these other negative things that might show up. I say that to believe that I believe that we can achieve a world where denying people the ability to feel their feelings and remove their choice and ability to experience the totality of the human experience isn't necessary. I believe we can have a world where you are allowed the totality of your human experience, the ability to feel all of your feelings, and things not kind of go to hell in a handbasket at the same time. I believe that the go-to solution for both of these societies was to remove feelings and choice from everyone is because we have not learned collectively how to deal with big feelings, our own or others, nor have we learned how to properly mitigate and handle them. For a long time, it's actually been encouraged that we avoid ever feeling sad, ever feeling anger, ever feeling anything really that might make us uncomfortable. That oftentimes, when we do feel them, how we react or how others might react is never truly predictable. We avoid ever feeling bad because we're told that to feel such a way is not okay. And then we do feel those things, we don't know how to react or express ourselves in a healthy way. And so I believe that if we knew how to feel our feelings in totality and sit with them and understand them, we could make a difference. Which brings me to a book I started reading not too long ago that I think might help. So the book is called Trauma Stewardship, an Everyday Guide to Caring for Self While Caring for Others. So it's a book by Connie Burk and Laura Van Dernoot Lipsky, and it has some tips that I think could help. While the book itself is targeted towards those in professions like social work, mental health counseling, trauma center workers, those who are dealing with extreme amounts of like just kind of almost surrounded by traumatic situations, like doctors, even like paramedics and things like that. This book is kind of targeted towards them. But I feel that some of these tips could be reworked in a way for just being able to understand how you might be feeling regarding a situation. And so that's kind of what I'm about to do now. So in this book, there are 5 directions in navigating difficult emotions regarding what you might be going through. So in the book, they say directions, but I'm actually going to just say the word steps going forward because I feel like that'll be easier to follow. So the first step is to create a space for inquiry. So this might look like asking yourself questions about how you're feeling. So getting to the why of how you're feeling, like why am I feeling this? What happened to make me feel this way? Why do I feel this way about what happened? Now, after doing that, step 2 would be choosing our focus. So in this case, this just might look like just being conscious of where we're putting our focus on at the time. So is there another way to look at this situation while experiencing these emotions? Do we need to take a step back fully to fully understand what is going on and choosing a way to prioritize what it is that you're going through? Step 3 is building compassion and community. And that's just as it kind of sounds like. So have people you can turn to when you're having these difficult feelings and have compassion for yourself because you're not a bad person for feeling angry. You're not a bad person for feeling sad or disappointed in an outcome of a situation. Sometimes we don't get the things that we want, and that makes us sad, and that is okay. Step 4 is finding balance. So, for all the negative that we feel, it is very likely that there might be something positive to feel as well. And if not, you can always create something. So, maybe you take up a hobby or you journal, but you're allowed to feel your feelings and then do something to sort of help in moving those feelings along. You don't have to sit in those feelings in perpetuity. The last step given in the book is called a daily practice of centering ourselves. And it's essentially just making it a habit of being where your feet are. Sometimes, especially when it comes to the negative emotions, well, like quote unquote negative. I don't want to say they're actually negative, but I know that's how a lot of people kind of talk about them. So, yeah, so sometimes when it comes to the negative emotions, we can be pulled back into those feelings without even realizing it. And in times like this, practicing mindfulness or meditation can help us to not be stuck in those, like in that kind of cycle. Now, will that fix everything? I I think it's at least a start. We can share tools we can use to help us that can like we can use to help us feel our feelings, and that can just get us started. I'm not saying that this is going to be the end all be all, but it's a good place to start. And that's kind of how you have to start anything. You just have to start. If you want to do anything, you just have to start. and then we can find extra stuff along the way. Because honestly, I'd rather we all be allowed to feel the emotions that we are often told are not good, so that we can too feel those that will make us happy as well. Because if we're honest, I do not believe it is possible to feel the totality of our emotions that we do want if we don't understand, or we can constantly run away from the emotions that we are often told to not want or to avoid. How do you know what joy is if you've not experienced sadness? How do we feel the totality of the human experience if we're afraid to experience the bad? So, hey, I think that even feeling our feelings too can be in art like everything else. Last but certainly not least, we have the awe moment. And this week we have a poem that I wrote actually. So the feelings I had while writing this poem were similar to some of what we discussed in this week's episode. So the poem is called Embracing the Unknown, and it reads as follows. Something I've never told anyone is that I love the sky for the same reasons that I fear the sea. The sky reminds me how small I am in the grand scheme of things, how many possibilities, galaxies, and lives exist, that I too matter as all the stars and things in the sky, that I can exist in an unimaginable amount of ways, and in the sea, I am also reminded of how small I am in the grand scheme of things, how much exists that I do not know, how little what I do might actually matter. I am small and I am vulnerable, and I can be hurt in an unimaginable amount of ways. And even as I liken myself to the sun, vibrant and beautiful and ever present, I still find myself curious about the depths of the sea. And maybe I will never know the depths of the sea. And maybe I will only ever see you from my place in the sky. Still, there are days when I see the sun and the sea dancing, and I think, wow, we're beautiful. Now, while I was writing that poem, the ocean kind of represented those fears of those feeling those really big feelings for me. So, of being afraid to be vulnerable while pursuing something that will bring me a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. And it was while writing this poem that I realized I can dream about those possibilities that I want to experience and explore, and also just embrace being afraid to do those things, and not letting being afraid, or not in wanting to avoid being afraid, let that stop me from getting the chance to pursue something that I feel will bring me a lot of joy or bring me a lot of happiness. And so I believe that both of those parts of me together, so both the part of me about these dreaming and wanting these really big things, and also being afraid of those things, I think bringing both of those parts together can be quite beautiful. So yeah, I'm going to step into embracing the unknown and embracing this fear. And if you feel similarly, you can do the same. I want to enjoy the totality of the human experience, and I think that's a worthy enough reason. So yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments. And if there's anything you'd like to hear me talk about in particular, drop that in the comment below as well. Maybe even share a piece of art that you're loving this week, and I might check it out. So follow the socials. They'll be in the description. Art Like Studios on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, and Instagram. And then my personal is The Lovely Infinite, BLVLY Infinite, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and yeah. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for keep being lovely, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.